Today on Jerusalem Dateline, in June 1967, Israel fought and won the Six-Day War. Was it just good military planning or something more? And days of rage. For 2 weeks, thousands of Turks have taken to the streets to protest an Islamic State. Now the government is cracking down. Plus, Formula One racing comes to Jerusalem. Hello and welcome to this edition of Jerusalem Dateline. I'm Chris Mitchell. In June 1967, Israel's enemies prepared for war, convinced they could drive the Jews into the sea. But Israel's swift and decisive victory confounded military experts, stunned their enemies, and captured the world's attention. Many believe what happened in those 6 days in June was nothing short of a miracle. Here's a story we did several years ago on the anniversary of that victory. On June 4th, 1967, the infant state of Israel found itself on the brink of annihilation. Israelis still lived with the agonizing memory of the Holocaust. Now the Arab nations surrounding Israel vowed to make the blue Mediterranean run red with the blood of Jews.
We were thinking in terms of the Israelis are going to be thrown to the water.
On the morning of June 5th, 1967, Eitan ben Eliyahu flew one of the first missions against Egyptian airfields in the Sinai.
This is a matter of life and death. This is a matter of Israel is going to be destroyed.
People were in panic. People were talking about the imminent destruction of the state of Israel, of a war in which there will be an enormous number of casualties, at least 10,000 people will be killed.
Rabbis in Jerusalem anticipated so many deaths, they actually designated all of the public parks in Jerusalem as cemeteries. Just before the war, the joke in Israel was, last one's out, turn off the lights. But this black humor didn't mask the fear that many Israelis genuinely anticipated a catastrophe. Israel found itself outnumbered and outgunned on 3 fronts: Egypt to the south, Jordan to the east, and Syria to the north. The Soviet Union had poured $2 billion worth of arms into the Arab nations. Israel's enemies brought twice as many soldiers, 3 times as many tanks, and 4 times as many airplanes to the battlefield. But just before the war, Egypt, Israel's main enemy, suffered a series of major mistakes and mishaps.
There was this miscommunication between the president, Nasser, and his top generals, and everything didn't work according to what they thought. And when the war broke, you could see and hear, which we did. We heard them. You could see and hear that the Egyptian High Command was not in control.
Egypt's High Command also dismissed warnings by mid-level Egyptian intelligence officers of an imminent Israeli air attack. The night before the war, Egypt's commander-in-chief, Abd Amir, gathered his high command for a party at an airbase far away from the front lines.
They were caught by surprise, totally.
2 weeks before the war, Egypt replaced nearly all of its commanders in Sinai with officers unfamiliar with the terrain. On the morning of June 5th, Jordanian radar detected the Israeli Air Force taking off. They sent a red alert to Cairo, but the decoding officer used the wrong day's code and failed to decipher the vital information. The warning never came. Instead, the Israeli Air Force decimated the Egyptian Air Force on the ground, the key to the outcome of the war. Some, like author Sarah Rigler, who's written on the Six-Day War, believe this series of Egyptian mistakes reveals the work of an unseen hand.
You can say, oh, wow, what a lucky coincidence. Or you can see the divine hand. We see that God arranged all these things to happen the way they did because he wanted the Israeli strike to succeed. He wanted us to win. He wanted us to regain our holy places.
To some, the confusion in the Egyptian command just before the war evoked memories of the biblical story of Gideon routing the enemies of Israel. Instead of annihilation, Israel won one of the most decisive victories in military history. Many Orthodox Jews and Christians believe the Jewish nation had witnessed a miracle.
For evangelical Christians, the Six-Day War was a huge moment of seeing God's hand intervene on behalf of the Jewish people. I mean, that really was, I think, so extraordinary, is that you had this moment where Arab leaders, Islamic leaders, were saying we're going to throw Jews into the sea, and it looked like another Holocaust was imminent. And suddenly, in 6 days, the Jewish people defended themselves, destroyed their enemies, tripled their land, recaptured control of Jerusalem for the first time in 2,000 years, and on the seventh day they rested. That just sounded way too biblical for evangelicals all over the planet, and they rejoiced with the Jewish people.
In the immediate aftermath of the war, everyone, religious and secular alike, recognized that this was from God because it was just so implausible. I mean, here everybody was expecting a tremendous defeat. This is a miracle. Even Moshe Dayan, who was the commander of the Israeli forces and who was a very secular person, he went to visit the Western Wall the day after it was liberated, and there's a tradition to put, put little notes to God in the wall. So he put a little note to God between the crevices of the wall, and of course, as soon as he left, the newspaper men in their typical discreet way ran and took the note out and read it. What did it say? And it was a line from Psalms that said, "This is from God. It's wondrous in our eyes."
The Six-Day War certainly changed the landscape of the Middle East, but the impact of the war reached far beyond the shifting Middle East borders to places like Moscow, Washington, and the capitals of Europe, and it's still being felt today. Israel's swift and complete victory changed the way Israelis looked at themselves. It changed the way the world looked at Israel. The Six-Day War was fought in the shadow of the Cold War between the Soviet Union and the West. The defeat of Egypt, Syria, and Jordan was a serious defeat for the Soviet Union, which had supplied its Arab allies with military hardware and training. Israel's victory inspired Jews everywhere, but perhaps especially in the Soviet Union. 40 years ago, here on the streets of Jerusalem, you would have heard people speaking Hebrew, English, and Arabic. Today, you'll also hear a lot of Russian. The Six-Day War triggered a series of events that eventually brought more than 1 million Jews out of the former Soviet Union and into Israel. Natan Sharansky is one of them. The world-renowned human rights activist says the Six-Day War inspired him and thousands of other Russian Jews to stand up to the Soviet government.
In fact, the Six-Day War built a bridge, a very strong bridge between us, our brothers in Israel and in America and other parts. In fact, it made us part of the free world. The Six-Day War was the beginning of counting back in the days of the Soviet Union.
It took more than 20 years, but as the Soviet Empire collapsed, thousands and then tens of thousands of Olim, Russian Jewish immigrants and their families, made their way to Israel. Sharansky and other Russian Jews compared their story to the Exodus story in the Bible.
We Soviet Jews felt that we are a continuation of that Exodus, and we got our strength from Six-Day War. And all the Soviet leaders were resisting for a long time. And then when they tried in the last moment to stop us, we left Soviet Union, and Soviet Union was destroyed, disappeared.
The '67 war also changed Israel's relationship with the West, especially the United States. At the time, the U.S. and Israel were not allies, and in fact, the Americans put an embargo on arms to the Jewish state. Then, a striking victory in June. Michael Oren is the author of 6 Days of War.
At the time, Israel fought the Six-Day War with French weapons, not with American weapons. And only then did American leaders begin to think, well, hey, maybe these Israelis are worth having on our side in the Cold War. So there was really a sea change, a night and day change between June 5th, 1967 and June 11th, 1967.
For the Arab world, the humiliating defeat in the war led to big changes. The rise of the Palestinian cause, the use of oil as a weapon against the West with cartels and price hikes, and perhaps most importantly, a tighter fusion of religion and politics in the Muslim world. Oren says the roots go back to the '67 conflict.
I think it made the modern Middle East. With the death of secular Arab nationalism, the door was opened for the ascendance of a new ideology in the Middle East, and that is Islamic radicalism. That's where it begins.
With help from Arab, communist, and Third World allies, and eventually from Europe, the plight of the Palestinians took center stage at the United Nations. Within a few years, terrorists commanded world attention with barbaric killings of innocent civilians around the world. Middle East analyst Joel Rosenberg says the bitter memory of 1967 continues to fuel Arab and Muslim hatred and create new deadly partnerships.
So this is setting into motion the rearming of Israel's enemies, building new alliances among these enemies of Israel, particularly with nuclear powers, Russia, China, North Korea in particular, playing a role here in this region in a way they really haven't really in the last 40 years or so.
But while Israel faced new and different dangers after the war, it also attracted money, visitors, and citizens from supporters around the world.
For the Israelis, again, reuniting with the biblical homeland, making Israel much more of a Jewish state, creating an alliance between Israel and the United States. Tremendous amount of pride in Israel in terms of diaspora Jewish communities that began to give tremendous amount of money here to people immigrating to Israel. There were tens of thousands of people who immigrated after that. It really transformed the society, transformed this country, and made the Middle East a very, very different place.
Up next, from Turkey to Syria to the nuclear race in Iran, we examine the events in the Middle East and their impact on Israel.
Today we're on a field trip to discover what inflation is doing to our paper money. In this hand is a $20 bill and in this hand is a $20 US gold coin. They used to have the same buying power, but how much can they buy today? In this first basket is what my $20 bill buys: milk, bread, peanut butter, and jelly. And here's what one $20 gold coin will buy: 6 baskets full, worth nearly $2,000, almost 100 times more food, simply by owning gold dollars instead of paper dollars. History shows that the gold coins have been the best way to beat the rising cost of living. So class, the moral is that unless you want to live on peanut butter and jelly sandwiches in the future, you should turn some paper dollars into gold coins now. How and why is explained in a new book, The Great Debasement. Call the number below for a totally free copy. And that's the simple truth.
Help! If an emergency happened right now, you can have help at the push of a button with Medical Alert.
Remember when I took that fall, Mary?
Oh, yes, that was terrible.
Yes, it was. Help! And I thought, what if you hadn't been there? I ordered my Medical Alert the next day.
I can't describe how safe I feel now with my Medical Alert. You didn't know I was wearing it, did you?
Medical Alert is easy to install, waterproof, and covers you inside your home and out.
It helps me feel safe from fires, break-ins.
And of course, a Medical Alert. And if you don't have a home phone, don't worry. They have that covered.
There's always help at the push of a button. Don't wait till you need it.
Get Medical Alert for less than $1 a day. There are no long-term contracts. Order now and get your second button free. Call for your free brochure.
For your free Medical Alert system with second button free, call 800-575-8507.
Welcome back to Jerusalem Dateline. Fears that Turkey is on the road to becoming an Islamist state has its people at odds with their government. In the biggest challenge to Prime Minister Erdogan's 10-year rule, widespread protests over new Islamic restrictions have rocked the country. After days of unrest, the government responded in force, driving the people from the streets. John Wagi has more.
In Istanbul, an angry quiet has settled in Taksim Square, the place that honors Ataturk, the father of secular Turkey, and the site where protesters were attacked by police with water cannons Tuesday night. Several are dead and thousands have been wounded in demonstrations that started in Istanbul late last month and spread to Ankara, the capital, and more than 75 other cities. It began with a protest over the development of a park, but it has become a secular demonstration of anger against the restrictions of the ruling Islamist party, headed by Prime Minister Recep Tayyip Erdogan. Turkey is a NATO ally, and Erdogan has a close relationship with President Obama. At a rally on John F. Kennedy Street in Ankara near the U.S. Embassy, this man shouts Tayyip Erdogan is a walking dictatorship. This is a dictatorship. We are against dictatorship. Protesters say the demonstrations are partly a spontaneous groundswell.
They are not from any movement, but they just feel solidarity with the people who are participating in the protests.
Despite the anger in the streets, the government remains defiant, saying it will listen to complaints, but knowing that it retains popular support among Turkey's millions of Islamist sympathizers. On Monday, the president signed a law restricting alcohol sales and banning its advertising, and the government unveiled its hardball tactics against the protesters a day later. The newspaper headline in the Turkish kiosks reads, "Shame." As a Sunni Muslim, Erdogan has been among the most vocal leaders in opposing Iranian nuclear weapons. He has also backed the opposition to Syria's President Bashar Assad. And Turkey houses dozens of U.S. tactical nuclear weapons and thousands of American military people on its soil. All good reasons for keeping an eye on what happens next in the former capital of the Ottoman Empire.
To talk more about the situation in Turkey and the rest of the Middle East, we sat down in our Jerusalem studios with Clifford May, president of the Foundation for the Defense of Democracies. Well, Cliff, thanks for joining us. There's a lot of things going on in the Middle East right now. One of the things that's happening is a lot of turmoil in Turkey. And Erdogan is trying to suppress this sort of popular revolt. What's your thoughts about that right now and what's happening in Turkey?
Well, it's very interesting, and in some ways it's surprising. Erdogan, for a long time, as you know, has backed away from the concept of Turkey at its origination in almost 100 years ago. And that was that Turkey would be a secular state, there'd be a clear differentiation, separation of mosque and state. He is moving in an Islamist direction. He looks at the Muslim Brotherhood and what it's doing in places like Egypt, and he approves of it.
Now, a lot of people have compared this to the Arab Spring. Do you think there's any danger of the overthrow of the Erdogan government, or is this just something that he's going to have to deal with and suppress?
I think it can be called a sort of Turkish expression of the Arab Spring in that it represents deep felt and long hidden dissatisfaction. Is Erdogan in danger? Look, probably not, but the fact of the matter is people like you and me and political scientists and intelligence analysts, they never know. I think he's very tough. I think he's been harmed and weakened by this domestically and internationally, but I would be surprised, not astonished, but surprised to see this spiral into a full-scale revolution.
Another issue bigger than that probably is the Syrian civil war. And Austrian peacekeepers have pulled out of the border between Israel and Syria. And you were just on the border as well as being in Jordan as well.
Yes, there's a full-blown civil war taking place in Syria. 70, 80,000 people have been killed. From a humanitarian perspective, terrible and tragic. The fact of the matter is that there's been a big change very recently. It was seen as inevitable and perhaps imminent that Bashar al-Assad, the Syrian dictator, would fall. Now he's back on the offensive. Right. He's taken a key strategic city. And no one's saying he's necessarily going to win, but he's certainly not losing. What we have to look at are the possible outcomes. There are bad outcomes and there are worse outcomes. We need the wisdom to distinguish between the two.
And maybe one of the biggest problems right now is the Iran situation. And let me just play a clip from Yuval Steinitz. He did a press conference earlier this week concerning Iran's arsenal that they're preparing.
We are speaking about an historical game changer. It's going to change the world. It's going to create a dangerous new world, totally different than today. It's going to have terrible, dramatic effect, not just on the Middle East and Israel, but also on Europe and the United States and beyond.
How serious is this infrastructure that Iran is building, and what is the West or the U.S. doing or not doing?
It's extraordinarily serious. Iran represents the most important strategic threat to the United States. That means Iran seeks to diminish the United States, destroy its influence in the Middle East and as much of its influence everywhere as it can. Possibility that the Iranian regime is serious when it says it wants to exterminate the Israelis, actually create another Holocaust, has to be taken very, very seriously. If the Iranians get these weapons and begin to build them, it'll be a hinge moment in history, and it'll make it a lot more likely that the 21st century will end up bloodier than the 20th century. So what are we doing about this? Well, not enough is the simple answer. Sanctions, thanks to Congress, and there's a bipartisan consensus in Congress that we should have the toughest possible sanctions, really economic warfare. We're getting to dangerous territory. We probably have less than a year. The Israelis are looking at their options and capabilities. If they can stop Iran, they will. We don't know if they can.
Are you confident the Obama administration has the will, the political will to stop Iran?
I'm not confident. I think that there are many advisors to, I don't know that President Obama has made up his mind. I think there are signs he hasn't entirely, but he may have. No way for me to know that. But many advisors are saying, look, we contained the Soviet Union for 70 years. We contained it after it became a nuclear power in the early 1950s. We can contain a nuclear Iran as well with deterrence and doctrines like mutually assured destruction. They hit us, we hit them, they hit Israel, Israel hits them. I think that's folly. I think that's crazy. I spent a lot of time in the Soviet Union. The regime was evil, communism is evil, but they were very rational. Here you're talking about people who have the mentality of perhaps of suicide bombers, where they understand that Israel is a one-bomb country. One nuclear weapon exploded here could destroy everything, again, a Holocaust. One in Iran, which they see as a small part of the greater Muslim world, that's not a big price to pay. So this is an extraordinarily dangerous moment we face, and most of all, the Israelis face.
Well, I appreciate your perspective, Cliff, and glad to see you here in Jerusalem. Hope you come back.
It's great to be with you guys here in Jerusalem.
Up next, for the first time, thousands in Jerusalem see Formula One race cars come to the streets of their city.
Attention sleep apnea patients. Are you tired of the expense and hassle of getting your CPAP and BiPAP supplies? Are you fed up with dealing with ill-fitting, leaking, or worn-out masks and straps? Are you worried about the effects that unsanitary tubes, cushions, and filters have on your health? If you said yes to any of these questions, Allied Medical Supply Network has the solution to your problems. You could qualify to have your supplies regularly delivered right to your door at little or no cost to you. That's right, no more inconvenience, no worn-out masks and straps, no more unsanitary equipment, just restful sleep. Call Allied Medical Supply Network today to determine if you may qualify to receive your fresh, brand-name supplies at little or no cost. Don't delay. Call us now to see if you are eligible to save money on regular delivery of your CPAP and BiPAP supplies. Call 1-800-815-9947. That's 1-800-815-9947. Or go to cpapsupplyhelpline.com.
Announcing an important breakthrough in healthcare that can benefit everyone. If you or anyone you love needs affordable health insurance, regardless of a pre-existing medical condition, call Quick Insurance 123 today and get the immediate relief you deserve. Quick Insurance 123 was created to provide affordable health insurance to all uninsured Americans, with or without pre-existing conditions. This is not a discount card. This is a real insurance program that lets you choose from many affordable health plans, with access to doctors, hospitals, emergency services, and more. So call the number on your screen now and get the health coverage you need, just for calling. As a special bonus, we'll send you a free prescription savings card that could save you up to 85% on your prescriptions. That's right, you could save up to 85% on your prescriptions just for calling. Call Quick Insurance 123 to find out how you can get affordable health insurance and receive your free prescription savings card just for calling. Don't wait. Getting a free quote is as easy as 1, 2, 3. Call today.
Welcome back. Formula One racing cars. They're not what you'd expect to be seeing on the streets of Jerusalem. But that's exactly what thousands of people watch when a variety of race cars came to the city. It wasn't a race, but more of an exhibition, where various cars, including Formula One cars, took laps around the nearly 2-mile course. They sped near the walls of the Old City, the King David Hotel, and other Jerusalem landmarks. It also included stunts on a BMW motorcycle. The event is part of Formula One's Peace Roadshow. It features world-class cars and drivers from teams like Ferrari, Mercedes, and Lotus. Many Israelis were thrilled with the show.
It's so wonderful. Even the noise is wonderful.
My kid's here, as you can see, is on my shoulders, and he loves it.
It's amazing. You have never seen Jerusalem like this.
Well, I think the atmosphere is just electric.
Mayor Nir Barkat explained to a packed press conference why he felt this event would make the city a better place.
There's no doubt in my mind, if you look as reporters, you will find, looking around, Jews, Muslims, and Christians, all focusing on the common denominator of how sports gets people together. And that is why the Jerusalem Formula One Peace Roadshow, I believe, will make Jerusalem a better place and send a message that Jerusalem is open for all of us to enjoy.
The mayor hopes this will be an annual event, and some hope it's even more.
For me, it's something great that in Jerusalem, the capital of Israel, we have Formula One the first time, and I hope it is the start of races in the future that will be in the official Formula One races.
Coming up, we take another look at the city of Jerusalem from the air. When you're driving along and your cell phone rings, do your eyes instantly go off the road? Then you need to get a grip. Hi, David Jones here with the new GripGo, the most versatile hands-free mount that will instantly grip any phone for safe driving. Just attach the suction cup to your windshield or dash, and GripGo grabs your phone ultra fast. Then it peels right off. And don't worry, there's no sticky residue left behind. The 360-degree pivoting mount allows you to always get the perfect viewing angle. It's even strong enough to grab and hold this expensive smartphone out the window. Yet it comes right off with ease. That's the advantage of GripGo. You can get the amazing GripGo with dashboard mount for only $14.95. We'll send you a second kit free. Just pay separate processing and handling. Get 2 complete GripGo systems for just $14.95.
To order GripGo for $14.95 plus processing and handling, call 1-800-709-5259 or order online at getgripgo.com.
Jim is 38, mortgage, married, 3 great kids. He wants to protect his family with a $500,000 term life insurance policy. What do you think it'll cost him? $100 a month? 60? 40? Actually, none of the above. Jim can get a $500,000 policy from a highly rated insurer for under $19 a month. His secret? SelectQuote. SelectQuote is impartial. They'll comparison shop the pick of insurance companies like these to give you a choice of your best prices. SelectQuote has great savings on term life for women, too. Jim's wife, Deidre, can get a $500,000 policy for under $16 a month. SelectQuote has helped make term life insurance affordable for hundreds of thousands of people since 1985. How about you? Just call this number or go to SelectQuote.com. SelectQuote. We shop, you save.
Perhaps the biggest impact of the 1967 Six-Day War was the capture by the Jewish people of the city of Jerusalem for the first time in nearly 2,000 years. We end this edition like we did the last one, with aerial shots of the old city. Thanks for joining us. I'm Chris Mitchell. We'll see you next time on Jerusalem Dateline.